recreation and not a replica.
When the Amistad ship sailed into Buffalo, New York, members from Kenilworth United Church of Christ climbed aboard to experience a piece of UCC history.
I thought it was really cool.
Like, all of this is so amazing.
It's really fascinating. I like the ship.
Visiting the ship has a special meaning for Kenilworth. The Amistad represents faith, new friendships, and freedom from prejudice. Kenilworth experienced those same qualities just a few months ago when they set sail on a journey in search of a new minister.
Well, here we are, the chosen few. Remember, we got elected by the congregation, a vote of 12. We were the 7 that got the highest votes. Our commission is that we find a new minister.
Search Committee, having prayerfully considered the responsibilities of the position, are you prepared to serve in Christ's name for the well-being of Kenilworth United Church of Christ?
Each member of the search committee brings their own unique background and experiences to the committee. Judy Goldie is a public school music teacher.
I was baptized in the church, I was confirmed, I was married, and probably my funeral service will be from the church. They asked me if I would put my name on the ballot, and I said yes. And the reason I said yes is because my grandma and grandpa were part of the founding members of the church back when it was a mission church, and I could just see Grandma saying, you better get in there and help pick a new minister, because we have to keep things going.
Craig Ebert does odd jobs around the church.
I've been a member of the church for about 14 years. My wife actually wanted me to get more involved in the church, and so I thought this would be a good way to do it.
Kathy Kenzie is a dental receptionist and a mother.
I offered to do it because of my daughter coming the age for confirmation. So it was important to me who was selected.
Dave Dombrowski was very reluctant to serve on the committee.
They asked me to serve, and I kept saying no, no, no. In a way, I wanted to do it, but in a way, I was thinking I got, 2 jobs, kids in college, it's a lot on my plate. But then the ballots came out, and my name was on there. But it actually, now that I look back, it actually was worth it.
Jean Edgecombe is a retired art teacher.
I've always made banners for the church, and I taught in Sunday school for 40 years. I had been on a search committee, several years ago, and that pastor we chose, he was only here for a year and a half, and he died, unfortunately, of a heart attack. And so I thought I'd like to try again.
Mary Lestack works for the government.
I feel strongly about where my church should be going, and I thought if I was on the search committee, I would be able to have a big say in who was going to be picked.
And Roger Haas spends his retirement volunteering for several organizations.
I'd never done anything like that before, and I thought that it would be an interesting process. Amongst the 7 of us, we chose our officers, or, who was going to be chair. Turned out that's the job I ended up with.
Although their search for a new minister has ended, they came together again to take a look back at the process and the lessons they learned along the way.
They always say there's 5 steps in church. The dream, the trying to make the dream work, fulfilling the dream, and then you either find a new dream or you start to go down. And I feel we were at step 4 where we were becoming very complacent.
We needed a conductor. The orchestra was running, but it really did need a conductor, and that's what we were looking for. Right. Someone to make us a symphony.
When I first meet with the search committee, one of the first things I say to them is that it's important that they not exclude candidates by category, because if they exclude people either by race or by gender or sexual orientation or age, or whether they're differently abled, they may be excluding the very person that God is calling to them. Kenilworth was a typical church. They were really wanting a white man, straight, with a family, 3.2 children or something. And And they really began at that spot.
We just thought we'd carry on the tradition of finding someone like the kind of a person we'd had.
And how many times we had people come up to us after church or when we were around the church and say, you need somebody that's fire and brimstone, or I want a man minister, and can you get somebody like that TV guy on Sunday mornings?
Every now and then I would have this one conservative member of the congregation come up and say, I hope you're going to get a man of faith. And the man was a big emphasis.
We had looked at 2 other people too. The one we offered and turned us down, and then the other one everybody liked but me. And then we went back and forth, and we were going to go unanimous, and we never did.
And by the time we'd made our decision, he'd made a different decision. And maybe it was meant to be that way. Maybe that was God saying, you've got to wait.
2 years later, Kenilworth UCC was still drifting without a new minister.
After the second year started, I mean, we really got to the point that we felt God was leading us somewhere. We didn't know where he was taking us, but we really felt that this had been a journey, that he was showing us things all along the way that we couldn't have preconceived ideas to start with, that he was leading us.
I don't think so. At the end of the second year, I thought God had abandoned us. I thought, we're never going to find anybody. This is going to be a permanent job.
The low point for me was when we were pretty sure we had the one candidate, the one female candidate, and we basically offered her the job, and she took 3 days to think about it and then said no. It seemed like at that point, it's like, you know, where are we going to find somebody?
While the Kenilworth Search Committee wrestled with frustrations, the Euclid Avenue Congregational Church of the United Church of Christ embraced a minister from a different cultural background, and together they set sail on a new journey.
We worship God always in the fellowship of our faith. We are one people. We are the body of Jesus. It's a church that historically is made up of a membership of African Americans and European Americans. And part of my vision is to help it to become multiracial, multicultural. And so far, I would say that it's going well.
It hasn't been smooth sailing for Reverend Pamela Cheney. She is Minister of Christian Education.
My goal is not to be a minister of Christian education. My goal is to be the minister of a local church.
For the past 2 years, that search has been unsuccessful.
It's been more than frustrating. My profile has gone out to no less than 20 churches, maybe even 30 at this point. And I've only been contacted even for an interview by 2 churches. I want to be ready. I want to be ready. I was called to one of our churches for my trial sermon because it fit. I sang that song as part of the sermon. I should mention that I was the only black person in the congregation. And after I'd been there about 3 months, I was asked not to sing. And I was told we knew we were calling a black person, but we didn't know we'd be exposed to black culture.
Churches like Kenilworth that begin their search looking for a Euro-American male may be in for a rude awakening. Seminaries are graduating more women, people of color, and people with disabilities than ever before.
People still have difficulty with I think with knowing what to say and what to do with persons with disabilities. And sometimes I feel that because of people's attitudes, that what I have to say sometimes doesn't carry the weight of maybe what an able-bodied person does.
Female seminarians might outnumber male seminarians. So if you only have a certain number of people of a certain ilk who are graduating, then guess what? You will be waiting and waiting for that male image, and that person may not even exist anymore.
The lion and the kitty cat just go on about their way.
We're told that the United Church of Christ is all-embracing and empowering and wants everyone to use their gifts. Well, somehow that message hasn't been received by a lot of the people sitting in our pews. And I think that many of our congregations still would like to have a Caucasian, middle-aged gentleman as their minister. But to be black and female is just very hard.
My long white road.
The winds of change forced Kenilworth to set a course in a different direction and consider ministers they never dreamed of considering before.
We had two profiles. We had another one that I believe was a husband and wife team, and you said, well, okay, we'll consider them, and you were going to put that other profile out of the way. And I had read that profile, and I said, but Roger, did you look at her references? Because we had not had one come through that had references like this person's references were.
The references Jean Edgecombe rescued were from the profile of Reverend Sarah Smith.
At that point, they received Sarah's profile, and they called me up right away and said, this person looks like a lesbian. And I said, well, she is. She's very open about it. She's out. And they said, well, we couldn't call her. Our church wouldn't accept that. And I said, well, it's your choice.
Personally, I didn't think it would fly in the congregation.
The thing that we should be concerned about was the fact that she was a lawyer, not that she was gay. That was really...
and a week later then, the whole committee said, would you come meet with us at the church? And I met with them, and they were excited. And they said, we had decided that her profile looked so good, even though we weren't going to call her, we needed to hear her preach.
So I got a call in January, we'd like to come hear you preach. I was like, okay, and that was the Kenilworth people.
If you stand up, we might upset this boat called the church. Sit down, Jesus, you're rocking the boat.
And I was very, very comfortable with
Well, and she blew us away, too, because she knew about our church.
The homework that she had done said to me, you really are caring about this congregation, or you wouldn't have bothered.
They said, after we heard her preach, we thought, even though we're not going to call her, we really need to interview her.
The first time we interviewed with the Kenilworth people was over here in the church, and they all sat there like deer in the headlights. And I called David afterward. I said, what is wrong with these people? You know, because I really liked them, but they didn't like talk to me. And it was like they were just staring at me, like they were at the gay zoo or something, like, oh, that's what they look like.
When I heard her interviewed the first and the second time, and I heard her talk positively about what she could offer us, I kept thinking, this is good. This is wonderful. We've got to have her. I can't wait.
And when David explained their story, all of a sudden why they looked so shocked made sense to me, because it was like, oh, they're like in shock about themselves, that they have the faithfulness to get past their prejudice.
And they said, when we got 5 minutes into the interview, we had stopped thinking of her as a lesbian, and we're thinking of her as Sarah. She'd become a person to them. And they were so excited.
That was the feeling I went home with after that. We're going to have to do whatever we have to do to get this woman to want to be the leader of our flock.
The seven of us had made up our minds, and now we got to convince the congregation that this is the person for us.
I've never had a committee do this before, but the whole search committee took over the sermon time on Sunday. And each one of the 7 people testified why they felt God was calling Sarah to this church. And I think that was a powerful part of it.
I realized right then, that's why I was called here. I knew I was supposed to be here, but I was like, why would God call me with this little suburban church that never even wanted a woman minister, much less, you know, me.
Sarah had told us that she would only come with 90% approval because she did not want to tear the congregation apart. And I looked at her and said, could we make it 85?
I was very honest with the search committee, and I said, this needs to be a safe place for me. And I said, I know that we'll have to let people get used to the idea. I said, and that's why I wanted 90%. And they all had a heart attack. 90, we'll never get 90.
It seemed like we were voting on someone's lifestyle rather than whether or not this was a good candidate for our church. But it was nerve-wracking until the vote was done. It was a scary week.
Oh my gosh, my heart was in my throat.
This isn't the first time God has urged a church to pick a minister totally different than anyone in the congregation. In Ohio, the First Congregational Church of Twinsburg United Church of Christ had no reservations about taking that plunge. Reverend Greg Coles is the first African-American minister at this predominantly Euro-American church.
It was about 2 years ago. I was still doing my thing as a nonprofit CEO, and I was on the supply list, and I was called to fill the pulpit here one Sunday, and it was like a still small voice spoke to me, and I knew that this was where I was going to probably wind up. You prepare a table before me. Being of a different cultural background, I have never had any sense here that that was an issue in any way, shape, or form for this congregation. It hasn't been for me. I've had to tone down my preaching just a little bit, at times, because I don't want to overwhelm the people here, but I think they're growing to understand, where I'm coming from and how passionate I feel about ministry.
A joyfulness to sing, a holiness to shine, a willingness to sacrifice, a readiness to serve, a steadfastness to stand, and a yieldedness to suffer for our Lord.
One of the things that I have learned about the God that we serve is that whatever our expectations are, He will blow them out of the water. That with God, we must always expect the unexpected. But when we leave ourselves open to even seizing the unexpected, God is able to bless us in ways and to bless our congregations in ways that we never even thought possible.
Expecting the unexpected was a new lesson for Kenilworth United Church of Christ. They never dreamed that the minister they would be calling would be female, let alone lesbian.
When the Sunday came for the vote, it was a secret ballot.
Nothing bothered me until we started getting to the ballots. And you're handing them out and everybody's making comments like, you sure about this choice? You all set for this vote?
And they're all sitting there. Oh my gosh, the tension. You could just cut it like a knife. It was incredible.
I handed out the ballots and then we went back there to count them.
And they came in and they said, welcome to Kenilworth. The first thing I said was, how many? I want to know the number. And they were like 91%.
When we got up and announced it, we all stood up in the front of the church.
Then they said, we'd like to introduce you to a new pastor. And they just erupted.
You'd think somebody won the Super Bowl because everybody stood up and started clapping and cheering.
I mean, it was like a Buffalo Bills game. No kidding. They were whooping and hollering and cheering and crying.
It wasn't just and then we're done. It just kept going.
Yeah.
And it just gave me such faith in this congregation.
That was an exciting day for this church.
It was the most alive feeling. And boy, the Holy Spirit was there. It was like we were doing what we were supposed to be doing. And when people really connect and we know that God's in the mix there, it was so powerful. And I just knew it was right.
We believe God is still speaking. The first thing we must do is what? Listen.
I don't think the church has stopped to take a breath. They were so excited that day, and that excitement has continued.
So I started dreaming about where we could go spiritually together. Dreaming about what our Amistad issue might be.
We were at a point where we needed a new dream. And we needed someone that had the energy and the tenacity to help us make a new dream.
I realized that day, I'm here to help them figure out their new dream. And so We're establishing what that new dream's going to be, and the church is just coming alive.
I believe it's time we take that next step and become a church that does mission.
They're planning a trip to Appalachia for a work camp. The energy is high. People that have been on the edge of the church are suddenly involved in the church.
In the short time we've had her, she's done incredible things. She's tried new things with the service, which I find very exciting. Hymns we never sang before.
And then when she did the Amistad thing this summer, and that was incredible.
Our Vacation Bible School was about the Amistad event. We watched the movie together. We've been talking about it in church. We've had several sermons for it.
This story is not just a historical event. It's about who needs us to stand up for them today.
We took 70 people down the boat, the most of any church in Buffalo, and they're like, "You're that little Kenilworth church?" And I said, "Hey, we're shaking a leg out there." And at the UCC tent, they asked us to do a display. We were the only local church that got to do a particular display on our Bible school.
Amistad means friendship, and that it's our story. And so we must learn it, but we must live it. And if we don't live it, then all this is for naught.
We called it that it was about freedom, faith, and friendship, and that it's our story. And so I'm trying to keep the ripples of the Amistad event continuing to flow, because when I got out of that boat, I realized that that story's about me too. And it's very moving to me to see that then they just embrace that story, and I think it's because they've been living it.
It's not uncommon for search committees to encounter rough waters when they set out on a journey in search of a new minister. Kenilworth was successful only when they released their anchor and agreed to let God take the wheel and steer them towards the right person.
God has different ideas, and if we listen to God, we're going to respond in different ways, in ways that are going to surprise even us.
Bottom line is for all of our search committees, be prayerful and don't bring your own biases into the process, but of course you're going to do that. But look beyond your bias and take that leap of faith and see what can happen there.
Don't make the decision just because a person is African American, male or female, or just because the church has never had a female before. Let the Holy Spirit lead your committee to the right candidate.
And they have to think about the challenge. They have to think about the changes that will come as a result of calling a new person.
When I think of some of the people we interviewed, it would have been very easy to say, well, this one doesn't look bad. But not looking bad isn't sufficient. You have to look really good.
And the other thing is, don't be discouraged. We got discouraged, and if it's not meant to work out, it won't work out. But eventually it will.
There's somebody out there for everybody, and you just got to have the patience to find that person.
I believe that God is working with you, that He's really there. He's behind it.
Isn't this awesome? I'm so excited.
So that's how we kind of got here, and it was so exciting, and I just love this church. And we're doing great things here. And this is fertile soil here. And people say, "Oh, Siri, so much has happened since you got here." You know, it's not about me. I just came in and did my thing. It's about these people that if they were open enough to call me and to get past themselves and what the world tells them, then we can do anything.